like that word. We like that word.
Hey everyone, we'll go ahead and get started. It might be a smaller group today just because it's still the summer and people might be out of office, but we will be sending these slides out, as well as the recording as always, and so we can go ahead and get started. If you want to go to the next slide. As always, if you can just keep yourself on mute, raise your digital hand and we can take questions that way, or you can put questions in the chat. All right, next slide. Okay, so for today, we will be talking about the following items, just a recap of how the year-end upload went for last school year. We also will be talking about the new school year submissions and making sure that you're submitting daily, getting those set up properly. We'll be talking about some graduation rate announcements for cohort 2025. We will have an announcement about an update to birth date validations, some incident and discipline data updates, an announcement about the summer EBT round 3 from CNP, some assessment rostering announcements, an announcement about the UTREX specifications that were newly updated. And then finally, we will just give to you guys the proposed schedule for the next calendar year, starting in January. All right, next slide. Okay, so myself and Stephanie will be doing this first presentation, so you can go ahead and go to the next slide. We just like to report back to the LEAs after we've finished the year-end finalizing period. So as always, thank you for everyone's hard work, not only in finalizing, but just all the work that goes into reviewing and fixing the data. We know that that is a lot. So we appreciate all the LEA's time and effort in getting their data in and accurate. And then just as a recap, we did send out courtesy data reviews for every LEA in early June. And then we just want to make sure that everyone is aware. We send those courtesy data reviews to the contacts that we had for the prior finalized period. So at year end, that would have been whoever finalized in December or whoever we had as your contact. So coming up for October, we have all of the year-end contacts. And this only applies if you haven't already reached out to me in an email, because a lot of people do. They let me know if they're leaving and they give me a new person. But if there was a change in your LEA and you haven't notified me or someone on our team, just know that when we do the data reviews for October, if there's been a change in personnel, we just want to make sure to be aware of that. That way we're sending everything to the right person. And then just in general, making sure to get things done early creates a smoother process for everyone, both at the LEAs and at USBE, because technical problems do happen. And then the submission deadlines are around the same time every year, depending on if those dates falls on weekends or holidays. And so just plan accordingly. You'll know for this upcoming school year what the finalized deadline is for October, December, and July. All right, next slide. Okay, so just talking about the deadline itself. So for this past year end, it was on July 7th, which was a Monday. It also was the Monday right after July 4th weekend. And so we did have a lot of LEAs that either did not finalize on time or had to refinalize past the deadline. That was due to a variety of reasons. A lot of the ones that needed to refinalize were due to issues that data and statistics found, and we had to reach out either due to SIS issues with membership data or a variety of other things that we had found. Some were level 2 fatal errors that showed up later. So we did have, a total of 13 LEAs that finalized after that deadline or refinalized. Everyone was done though by Wednesday, July 9th. And then we USD completed, we do audits of all the data once it's in the database. And our IT teams run processes to get all of that data in the databases. And so now all of the year-end data from last year is available for official use. All right, next slide. So just going over some specific issues that happened this year with the year-end finalization. We had a lot of questions, tickets, just a lot of general confusion about the address and district of residence errors. I think that is to be expected. This was the first year-end finalized period that those were fatal for everybody, districts and charters. And so we do expect that, there's some growing pains when there's new validations. As a general note, though, um, a lot of the, LEAs we had calling or emailing in, we just want to make sure that you are utilizing these two resources when you're troubleshooting. This is what we use. This is what the Utrecht system uses to validate those addresses and district of residence boundaries. And so those two links are things that you want to have bookmarked when you're trying to clear those. Next slide, please. Another issue that came up a lot was regarding membership, and specifically membership not being reported correctly for all students at 180 days. And that was with regular, Scram, and or YIC membership. It can occur on any SIS, but we have tended to see this issue more with LEAs that are on the Power School SIS. This is one of those things that we find a lot of the time after LEAs finalize, and then we have to reach out and ask you to go in, fix it, refinalize. And so this was a big part of the problem with LEAs that had to go past the deadline. So we just want to make sure that you are aware of this issue so you know what you're looking for before you finalize. We can help you check your membership in your reports, show you what to check. And if you're on Power School, we just want to remind you to make sure that you're running all of your reports with attendance membership so that it is in UTrex accurately before you hit the finalize button. And like I had said earlier, we do end up emailing a lot of LEAs after they finalize to fix this specific issue. The reason is because it has a really high funding impact. And so when we see an LEA that finalizes with no students at 180 days or very few, we have to have you refinalize. All right, next slide. Another issue that happened a lot, this tends to happen not just this year, but in all finalized periods, is pressing the button too early. And what I mean by that is if you're doing manual submissions and you're waiting on a submission, if you hit that button before the submission that you intended to finalize has fully processed in UTrex, then what happens is the data that actually gets finalized is not what you intended. In some cases, the data that you finalize might have had an error on it. It might have not had the correct membership. You might have been working on fixing something and then that fix didn't get through. Another outcome of hitting the button too early is that you might get that data batch error that pops up and it won't even let you finalize. So just make sure that you're patient with the system. If you know you need to walk away, and this is why we say do it early. Because if you hit that button too soon, it just we also have to end up emailing you, and we tend to email a lot of LEAs. So we just want to put this reminder out there to make sure that the time and date stamps show up correctly on your overview screen and that the status shows as processed before you hit the finalize button. Another related issue to that, this is specific to this year. We found that the level 2 errors, for the most part, it was the address and district of residence errors were showing up on the overview screen in a really delayed way. So you might have seen that the submission was processed. We saw that too. And then hours later, in some cases, those level 2 errors showed up. So we recognize that as a huge problem because if you happened to finalize and then those errors show up after the fact, level 2 errors do block students. And that happens in our process. And so even if you finalized with no errors and then they show up later, so we had to email any LEA that had that issue. That is on our side, and the UTrex team is working to fix that specific problem before October. So just wanted to report back on that. All right, next slide. This issue isn't something that's new. We just tend to get a lot of people emailing and asking questions about it. But regarding the level 2 membership warnings, so those are not errors, they do not block students. The guidance we put it on the courtesy data review, and if you email in, this is basically what will tell you. Um, if you get a warning on a student for this level 2 membership issue, it means that the student is enrolled in multiple LEAs. And on the validation itself, if you pull the file, it will tell you the other LEAs. You can also look the student up on the data gateway, student lookup function. But all you can do is review your own data and make sure that you're reporting the accurate entry and exit dates on your enrollment records for the student, and that you're prorating the membership accurately to how the student is enrolled with you and the amount of courses that they're taking with you. If your data is correct, then there's nothing else you need to do. And in that case, you would just ignore the warning at that point after you've reviewed. You can reach out to other LEAs, but if they don't, change anything on their end, the membership will be prorated between all the LEAs that the student is enrolled in. And that is according to the total allowable membership for that student. Okay, next slide. And then these were just a few things we noticed after the data was all finalized when we were auditing everything. There were some cases where the grade earned field was not being reported on all or most records that it should have been by some LEAs. So just a reminder to please make sure that you are reporting that data for students in grades 9 through 12, and that's on the course membership and transcript records. We have, over the past few years, heard varying things that it might be a specific SIS issue, but then we have seen on that specific SIS, I believe it was Infinite Campus, some LEAs were reporting it and then others weren't. So whether you're having trouble submitting that because of an SIS issue, or, we just want to make sure that that gets into UTREX, and that your SIS is able to send that. And then incident data, was just not reported by some LEAs. So please make sure that your LEA and all schools that should be reporting incident data are sending it to UTREX, even if you keep track of it in a separate system. Okay, next slide. Okay, so Cliff will talk a little bit more about this. In the past, we have always given the guidance, to wait for us to email you before you roll over, which is still the case. This year, Cliff's team was able to get things done faster than expected, and he'll talk about going forward how LEAs can start rolling over earlier and make sure that they're getting their errors cleared earlier before the new school year starts. Because I know there's always a lot of concern about being able to submit and get things ready before the new school year, starts. So we did email this year on July 23rd that LEAs could begin rolling over to school year 2026 and set up, their new collections and start submitting. There isn't ever an official date of when the rollover happens, but we do send that email as soon as our system is ready for you to roll over. And then just as a reminder, a lot of the other stuff that I talked about previously does affect that rollover date. That's because, if LEA is finalized late, everything gets pushed back. So we have, different processes that have to happen after year end. And so whenever people wonder, why does it take so long before I can start resubmitting to UTREX? There's a lot of things that have to happen before we can just start accepting data for the new school year again. So if we can get everyone finalized on time, then we can have the rollover happen sooner. All right, next slide. Okay, this is just a reminder, after you finalize at year end or any finalized period, we have October coming up, to please make sure to download all of the relevant reports for that finalized period. So under UTREX reports, there is a set of reports for October, for December, and for year end. And you want to make sure to download and save each of those every time that you finalize, so 3 times a year. The purpose for that is that you have exactly the data that you finalized, and it's for your own records. If you ever had an auditor ask you for what you finalized, you would just have a quick way of providing that information. We do have an archived reports page, but it's not always available immediately. And so by downloading your own reports, you have that immediately. Just know though that those reports can change every time you resubmit because they're based on live data. So if you didn't turn your collections off after you finalized, those reports could potentially change. So you want to make sure to download them the day that you finalize. And then just another note, some LEAs have found it very useful to also download and save their examine data file. That file is found on the UTREX overview, because it's just another record of the data that everything that went in your finalized submission, and sometimes that can be helpful to have in the future. All right, next slide. Um, this is also a reminder. So in July, year end, LEAs should turn off the daily scheduled collections. So when you are done finalizing, and you know that you're done, you don't need to refinalize or do any more collections, please delete and stop submitting any collections to UTREX at that point. This is only at year end. For October and December, you continue submitting, but in July, we just need you to stop submitting. And there's reasons for that. We don't want to mess up your finalized data, or the UTREX team could speak better to this, but sometimes if you do another collection and it has tons of errors and problems, sometimes that collection is saved in the database and we don't want that to happen. So just remember in July to always delete your daily collections after you are done. All right, next slide.
There is a question in the chat, Callista.
Oh, thank you. Can we roll over SAS but not schedule reporting until... So the answer to that question is yes. If you are able to do that, yes, you can roll over in your SIS and not submit to UTREX. It's just that in the past, when we have said that, some LEAs just accidentally sent data to UTREX. So yeah. Okay. This next set of slides is I'm part of a new LEA. Do we turn off the data collection? Or is so you turn off the data collection in the data collector when you're logged in to your data gateway account, you want to delete the scheduled collection, and that is what sends the data from your SIS to UTREX. And then the next question, isn't rolling over early a problem if they need to? Yes, 100% yes. So that is an important part of that other question. If you roll over in your, and this actually has happened, if you roll over in your SIS after you finalized, and let's say it's early in the finalized window, and then we find a problem with your data from the previous year, that is a huge problem. So you want to be absolutely sure that you are not going to need to refinalize before you roll over, even if it's just in your SIS. Thank you. So the safe way is just to wait until after the deadline of July 7th. And sometimes even we have to email LEAs on July 8th because we found a membership problem. So yeah, that's always a risk if you roll over too early. Okay, the next set of slides are regarding some new fields from school year 2025, just us reporting back to you. So the AS exit code was introduced in school year 2025, so it's definitely new. Zero codes were submitted and finalized by LEAs. We did kind of expect this because at the end of the finalized period, we found that Aspire couldn't even submit that code. So this is just a reminder for this upcoming school year to make sure that your SIS is able to submit that. This code was presented on in the past few months, but just as a reminder, this new exit code is for special ed students who exit to adult ed, but are continuing to receive services from your LEA and they still have an IEP. That basically allows them to count as continuing instead of as a dropout. So if you have questions on that code, you can reach out to Malia. But we just want to make sure that in this next school year, everyone that has students in that that meet that criteria, the LEAs are able to submit that code to Utrex. All right, next. Oh, and I forgot one point on that. If you had a student that should have had the AS exit code for school year 2025, you have between now and the October deadline to get that updated. And so if you were not able to send that into Utrex, and the student should be enrolled with you because they're continuing, then you would need to do a historical update for this year. Okay, the next new fields we had were, these aren't necessarily new fields, but we started requiring kindergarten and Acadience reporting. In the past, it had only been required for students in grades 1 through 3, and this year kindergarten was added to that. So we did have a good number of LEAs submit that in Utrex because it was allowable to submit it with a template if you couldn't submit it in Utrex, but we had 122 submit the early numeracy and 123 LEAs submit the reading for kindergartners in Utrex. So that's very good. Just know that this upcoming school year, you will not be able to submit with a template. So by year end this school year, those validations will include kindergartners. And so you just need to make sure to send that in Utrex if you did not last year. All right, next slide. Okay, the new WIDA screener fields. We expect that LEAs were able to submit this data to Utrex. I just wanted to ask the question though, did any LEAs have issues submitting these new WIDA screener fields at year end? Or is there an SIS that couldn't submit it? And as a reminder, below I put what these are. So there were two new fields added. It's the WIDA screener score and the WIDA screener date. So just curious if LEAs were able to submit this at year end. Maybe you can put it in the chat or or let us know if you had problems and could not. Okay, so I'm not sure what to take from the silence, if that means people just didn't submit it or if nobody had problems. Okay, we did get feedback, so Neva was successful. Okay, so we know Infinite Campus was able to send it. That's good. Anyone from Aspire or Power School know if they were successful in sending it? Okay, and Davis is on its own SAS, that's good to know. Power School, okay. Anyone from Aspire? This is just helpful for us to know with new fields that it is actually getting into Utrix. Okay, great. Thank you so much for that feedback. That is very helpful. Okay, if anyone going forward though has any issues, please reach out to us with submitting those. All right, next slide. Okay, and then we also had a whole new record added. This was the S5 record, and it's for the summer EBT. So we know that LEAs were directed this last school year to submit this both in Utrex and through the Qualtrics form. We believe though that it was getting through to Utrex in the end and it was added in the examine data file. So please just make sure that if you do have eligible students, that you are submitting this to Utrex for this upcoming school year. And as a reminder of what it is, this was just added last year. It's a new record type created to add 3 new fields for free and reduced price meal eligibility. So the 3 fields are the free and reduced price eligibility date, the eligibility source, and then the DWS opt-out field. So again, this is only for eligible students. This is not all students. You can review if your LEA has schools participating in the National School Lunch Program and then submit S5 records only for eligible students. And if you have questions on that, you can reach out to the child nutrition specialist or give your questions to us and we can get those answered as well. All right, next slide. Okay, if I guess I will ask if there's any questions on anything that I talked about. You can feel free to put them in the chat. And if not, I will turn the time over to Cliff to talk about scheduling new collections for this upcoming school year. All right, I'll turn the time over to Cliff. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Go ahead to the next slide. All right, so it was touched on already that there's been some changes that we were able to do things a little bit earlier. So here's just a little bit of a recap of how to actually go in and set up your new school year collection if you haven't yet. So not everyone has the link on their overview page to do this, just the LEA admins will actually come through over onto the VRF to actually be able to do this work and to set this up. So once you get to the VRF, if you are one of those LEA admins, you've got the start collection button or your manage scheduled collection. After you've started one, you'll then go into the manage to work with it from there after. And if you haven't done this yet, I'm going to explain that now's the time. There's no good reason to wait. Go ahead to the next screen. All right, so now you can do a collect and validate before your school starts. So with this, you'll just set, as it shows here in the picture, to do collect and validate without the submit. I'll show the other on the next slide, but this means that we're going to take the collection and we're going to give you all of your responses back. So we'll be able to check to make sure your objects are working. We'll be able to check all those validation levels, at least on the level 1 level. And we'll be able to give you all this feedback as early as you're ready for it, with the 2 caveats that, as we had mentioned, your SIS needs to be rolled over. And you definitely do not want to do that before the end of the finalizer window date. So that's typically around like July 7th. Yeah, don't do it before that, because if there is anything critical, you may still have to come back in. But after that point, there's one more milestone to wait for, and that's for us to make that year available for you. And each year is its own separate manifest. So it actually has a whole separate collection type to it. And we are doing additional things on our side to help control and remove that risk factor that Calista talked about of in the past, being able to take the next school year's data and, you know, apply it into the old school year. That's got a lot of checks on it on our side to where that's not likely going to be able to happen. So we should be preventing it, not, you know, telling you to test that, but our intent is that we will be able to check that. And also at the end of that period, after we do have all collections finalized, we do go through and we ensure that all collections have come to a stop. So you'd actually have to physically go out to the site again and try to reestablish that schedule to be able to do so. And again, we're also turning off that manifest version. So that collection for the 2025 school year, for instance, it has an end date on it. And we set that end date to where it's not actually possible for us to take those collections after that date. So again, that's some of those examples of internally, we're taking extra steps to make sure that you're at less risk of being able to send the data incorrectly and have it applied incorrectly, which plays into why we're much more comfortable with this pattern here that we have, that you can get this feedback as early as we roll over that school year and say, you know, we've got 2026 out there or upcoming year out there and available, and you can go test it as soon as your SIS is flipped over with this collect and validate. If you just do collect, it's still a good test, but all that's going to do is it's going to tell you that you're connecting up with the zone integration server. It's doing some of the object level tests, and that's still valid. That doesn't actually go into the additional pieces, which are going to come into play where we start to give you results about those tests. And we tell you what your level 1s are, if you've got any student issues, course issues that are from the previous school year, but not in the current school year. That's a common thing that has to be changed year over year. And that's all going to be available prior to your first day of school. So there isn't any reason that anybody would have to worry about setting this collect and validate up and having it go into the wrong school year or actually loading into Utrex. The collect and validate does not go to Utrex. It stops here at this tool at the VRF, and it doesn't keep going on after that. The submit is that key thing that actually takes you on to the next step, where it then says, take this out to Utrex, submit it for me. And as a reminder, if anyone needs it, the configuration here is indicating that you do want to do that reoccurring collection daily, including the weekdays and weekends. And the start date, again, is going to be something which you'll want to make sure is updated when you do start your new collection for as soon as you are available to have that start. And you can pick your time. It really doesn't matter to us what time you pick. Everybody ends up picking different times, and we haven't ever had a bottleneck of it being a specific problem with that. So do what's best for your school and for your sending that data. Go ahead to the next slide. So when you are ready for the data to go through into Utrex, that's when you're going to use that schedule with collect, validate, and submit. And that's going to take you that next step further to be able to make sure that you do commit that data and that it's available to then be able to give you assessments and go out to vendors and all the things that the state has to offer from collecting that data and helping it move through the system. But until you use that submit, you can feel safe that you can get your errors checked. And as well too, if you're just on a basis where you want to see if you've resolved something, it's a good pattern to understand that at any point in time, you can do a collect and validate to see if you resolved an issue with a student without risk of it then, again, submitting out into Utrex. And again, just that last reminder one more time, to do the daily with the weekdays and weekends. All right, go to the next slide. And that's the short and sweet of what I have for you today. Any questions before we hand back off to Calista? All right, back to you, Calista. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. I'm gonna just give some announcements about the graduation rate, and sort of the timeline and the different reports. For those that are newer to their positions, the graduation rate is run for cohort 2025, so that's the class that just finished this last school year, with the finalized year-end data, but that is a preliminary rate. And so you basically have between now and the October finalized deadline to update and get anything right from year-end for your final grad rate. We run the final grad rate with the October data. And so now is sort of a crucial time for anyone at your LEA who needs to review graduation rate data to be doing that. But that being said, the first bullet point you'll see, we're still in the process of running it. And so right now, a lot of the reports that I'm going to talk about are not updated. David and I have been working on it the last couple weeks, and we're almost there. We've been having some issues with some of the cohort RA stuff, getting all of that right for students that get their cohort readjusted. And so just a note on that, I know that at the beginning of the school year, I saw some LEAs. Again, this only applies if you have students with the RA code. But if you do, you might have fatal errors right now, the S1.398. And that is because we have not adjusted the RA students from last year's cohort, and so it's triggering a fatal error if they're re-enrolled this year and you already put them as RA. So those fatal errors will drop off as soon as we get all of those cohorts readjusted. We're hoping to get this all done by Monday, maybe Tuesday at the latest, and then at that point next week, you should expect for us to email out all of the files that I'm going to talk about in this presentation, as well as all the reports getting updated. So we're still in the process of running it. Once it's run, hopefully next week, there's a few places you can look to review the data. The graduation rate preview report is accessible on the data gateway. Some of you will go there and you may not see it, and that means you don't have the right role. So you have to have the graduation role in Data Gateway on your account in order to see that report. Once you have that role, then when you log in, you'll go to the My Tools drop down and it's under the graduation heading. And then you'll see graduation rate preview report. It's currently grayed out. That just means that we haven't updated it yet. And again, we're hoping that we can start sending out all of the Move It files and get that report turned back on next week sometime. So the Move It files will send to every LEA that has a grad rate, and that is in, so the person that would have access to that, it's in Move It in the SURF folder, and you should get an email notification that it's been uploaded in the folder. We send 2 files. It's the exact same data that would be found on that data gateway report. So it's just 2 different places to look at the same thing. We give you the data by student level, and then we give you the aggregate rates by school and LEA. And so the purpose of both of those 2 reports, again, same data, just 2 different ways to review it, is we want you to look at all of the completion status codes, exit codes, and then as well as the graduation outcomes. So different outcomes are tied directly to those codes. So if the codes were not put in correctly, or you got new information on how a student exited, or a student maybe completed later after year end, you just want to make sure that you're reviewing that and getting things updated by October. And so please make sure that if it's not you, anyone in your LEA that would need to review that information has access either to those files or to that report on Data Gateway. And again, it's not available today, but we're hoping by next week, and for sure in the next few weeks, you'll want to start thinking about reviewing that. You'll have till October 6th to get everything updated. Unless you have historical updates, you'll want to put those in a little earlier. Okay, next slide. Another report that you want to make sure, if it's not you, someone at your LEA is reviewing, is the USBE report. The reason that you want to review this report is it's for all students who exited to adult ed or to take the GED. This is the source you would go to check, did they pass and get their GED, or did they get a diploma through adult ed? Those can have impacts on the outcomes for those students and how they count in your graduation rate. So if you just exited them to take the GED or go to adult ed, those will be a dropout if they're not updated to show that they either passed or that they graduated. And so this report is really important for any LEA that has students who did leave to take the GED or get their diploma in adult ed. And then once you've reviewed the report, again, this is found on Data Gateway. You have to have the right role, which is the graduation role. It's grayed out when it's not currently updated. I'm not in charge of this report. I know, Cliff, you might be aware, usually our USBE adult ed puts in a ticket to the Utrecht team, and I'm not sure if they've done that yet or not.
I believe I just got an update on that like yesterday.
Oh, okay, perfect. So it should be getting turned on here in the next little bit, I would think. Basically they'll give Cliff all of the updates for the past year of students that have taken the GED that we have record of or that got a diploma. And you will want to search for them. Unfortunately, the report is not done by LEA. It is by SSID and student name. And so you do kind of have to search student by student. And then as far as the coding goes, if you find them on that list, you want to make sure you see, did they pass the GED or did they get a diploma? The report shows both. If they got a diploma, they will actually count as a graduate. And so that's important in how they get coded. If they passed the GED, then they will count as an other completer. And so those codes would get updated, most likely with an S1X record update, which I'll talk about later. For the ones that got a diploma and count as a graduate, they will get the GC code. And then for those that pass the GED, they will get updated with the GG code. So if you have any questions on that, you can reach out to me, but please just make sure that someone in your LEA is reviewing that report when it is available. Next slide. Okay, so now if you're reviewing all of these data, the student codes, and you find that you have students that you actually need to change their code from last year, because Utrex is now accepting data only for the current school year, you have to update those students through either an S1X record update or a historical update. There are specific scenarios to use both methods, so it's not just an either or. Updates to prior year records for students that are still enrolled with you, meaning that they're attending your LEA this school year, has to be done with a historical update request. Any student that is exited out and is not attending currently, you can update their exit code or completion status code with an S1X. So we will deny any historical update request that can be done with an S1X just because you can get that done on your own way easier and faster. Historical updates, there's a form on the data gateway, and again, you have to have the right role. It's the LEA admin role to be able to submit those. Those are manual. We have to review those request by request, and then we put in tickets to IT. So there is a deadline for those because of the work that it takes to do those. So please make sure to keep note of that deadline. It is September 22nd this year. It's always 2 weeks prior to the submission finalized deadline. So again, this is for students that could have been coded as a graduate, and then they decided to come back, or you didn't know that they were coming back, and now they need to be changed to retained. There are some other scenarios where you might use a historical update, but that's a common one. And then anything else for students that are just exited out, it could have been years ago, it could have been last year. You can do an S1X in your SIS, and we do have trainings on that if you have questions on how to do that. And again, you can use the S1X process for updating any exit code or high school completion status code for students that are not enrolled with you this year. And then just know that if you do an S1X, those updates may not be reflected on the reporting, and that's because we run those and they don't point to live data that changes daily. So if you want to check if your update went through, you can just reach out to me or David and we can quickly look and tell you. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is just general information how we calculate the grad rate. So there are 5 ultimate outcomes for a student, and those exit codes and completion status codes that I was talking about, those directly impact which outcome a student will be counted in. So there's graduate, dropout, other completer, continuing student, or excluded. So the codes directly determine which of those outcomes a student will be counted, and then the actual calculation for the grad rate is the total number of graduates divided by the total cohort, and we take out the excluded students. And then the dropout rate is the same. It's just the total number of dropouts divided by the cohort, and we take out the excluded students. And so that is how we calculate. I think a lot of the times where LEAs have questions is how a student ended up in their cohort, that maybe they weren't accounting for. So anyone that is included in your cohort would be students that last attended your LEA as a school of record. And so if they transferred somewhere else, and they were school of record, no, they're still going to be counted to you. Other times it might be because a student attended your LEA only in 9th grade for maybe a few months, so you're not thinking about that student 4 years later. But if they did not attend any other LEA, or you didn't exit them in a way that showed, they went out of state or to private school or something like that, they will be counted to you still. So that's where we get a lot of discrepancies when LEAs ask us, why is my grad rate this? But we're happy to answer any questions once we send out all those files and you have questions about specific students or why a student is being counted to you. And again, this is not final right now. You can update things before October. All right, next slide. So for right now, what you want to be looking at is checking, once we send out the files, all of the outcomes that are right now being counted to the list of students we will send you. So if you're checking and you think, oh, that student shouldn't have been counted as a dropout, you want to review what codes you had entered them as, and then update it if it shouldn't have been what was reported. Those are the exact cohort graduation and dropout rates. And then just know that those do not add up to be 100%, and that's because we have other completers and continuing students. Okay, next slide. I'm not going to go over every single one of these code definitions. I'll let you do that when we send these out. But these are the codes you sort of want to be on the lookout for, because anyone that was finalized at year end with one of these codes, if it's not updated, then these will count as dropouts. So again, it's the graduation pending, exited to take the GED, exited to adult ed. These ones are a little more obvious. Expelled, you just left it blank, so it was unknown, or withdraw. So all of those will end up with a dropout outcome if nothing is changed. All right, next slide. These ones might not be as obvious, especially if you thought that they did go to another LEA after your LEA. But just know that these can become a dropout. It doesn't always mean that a transfer code is a dropout. It just depends on if they got picked up somewhere else. So these will become dropouts if the student does not enroll in another LEA as school of record, after exiting your LEA. And sometimes I just want to say there is nothing to update. This just might be, what happened. And there's really nothing you can do about that. So it doesn't hurt to review them though to make sure. Okay, next slide. So the timeline after October is when we run everything for the final grad rate. That deadline for October to have all your data in is October 6th. And then once all our processes are done, we audit all the data. Usually that takes a week or two. So we'll probably end up running the final grad rate. It's usually the beginning of November, end of October. And then we make all of those reports available to you first for review. And then it's published publicly in December. And again, if you have any questions on any of the graduation rate stuff, you can contact myself or David. And we will be providing more training on this before the October deadline. All right, next slide. Okay, any questions on any of the graduation stuff right now? Okay, I will turn the time over to Riley, and I just wanted to also point out, I didn't say it, one of my slides has a link to a really good resource if you don't already have it bookmarked or saved as a file. It's the federal codes list. It's on our website on the data and statistics page under the graduation reports. You can also find it in the slide, and it's a link. And it comes up as a PDF, and it's a really helpful, just 1 or 2 page view of all of the codes, what outcome they equal, the definition for that code. And so sometimes that's a little bit easier to view than the looking everything up in the UTREC specifications. So I would just encourage anyone that is updating graduation data to use that federal codes list. All right, I will turn the time over to Riley. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to provide an update to some of the birth date validations. Next slide, please. So we made the following updates after feedback from LEAs, and this came up at school year 2024 year end, and it has just kind of taken a while to go through all the approvals. So this came at the request of LEAs, and then we followed in suit, getting approval from various data stewards, data governors, and superintendency, because there were some validations that weren't making sense, and based on current guidance, there wasn't any reason to keep them. And so S1.353, which is computed age cannot be less than 18 months if migrant flag is Y, is now removed. And then for attached to that, there's the S1.310, which is computed age cannot be less than 3 years if membership is greater than 0. That is in process of being worked on, but it's going to be changed so that it's just updated to membership can't be greater than 0 if the age is less than 3, regardless of migrant status. At some point, kids were allowed to be entered if they're migrants, if they're under the age of 3 or greater than the age of 18. And we actually weren't sure that validation was even working properly. And so there were definitely some kids who were over the age of 18 but less than 3 and weren't migrants. And so we just went through and have been making these changes to these validations. So this is just as a reminder, LEAs may not receive funding for children under the age of 3, so membership cannot be greater than 0. But some LEAs have found value in having these students in UTRECs, and there is no clear reason why they should be blocked, so the validations were updated or removed or in the process of that. Yeah, so that's it for me. Thank you.
All right. Hello, everybody. Just one sec. I want to give Kim Loveland a heads up that we're about to start. Okie dokie. There, now you can see me. So my name is Brett Lowry. I am a research analyst for child nutrition programs. I am filling in for Tammy right now because she is out of the office today, so you get to look at me instead of her. I'm just going to be giving you a couple of announcements as well as a request for the upcoming summer EBT round 3 data collection. For those who may not know or are unaware, summer EBT is also known as Utah Sunbucks, which is a new program that we started this year where we use school data to give free and reduced meal eligible students $120 in food benefits during the summer. So we've already done rounds 1 and 2, and we've got round 3 data collection coming up. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So for this round 3 of data collection, the criteria is that the students must have been enrolled in a national school lunch program between July 1st through July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025. And the students must be determined eligible for free or reduced price school meals over the 2025 summer period, which is through August 31st, 2025. This is a federal program, so it falls under the federal fiscal year. You can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Thank you. The primary ways that we are collecting this data is through UTREX. There is the S1 record, which you're all familiar with, but then we've also have the S5 record set up, and this is information that is more applicable to the Utah Sunbucks program. And that little third bullet point underneath it is that it must have parent guardian names to issue summer EBT benefits. The S5 record does include a bunch of kind of demographic information, first, last name, enrollment date, information that falls along those lines. In order for us to submit this record to the Department of Workforce Services, DWS, we do have to have parent and guardian name information. We also need to have free and reduced eligibility source start date, free and reduced eligibility source, whether they were deemed eligible through Medicaid or SNAP or income or categorical applications. And then we also need on applications, there's a little box that asks if families want to opt out of data sharing with DWS. We do need that filled out as well, because if they choose to opt out of data sharing, then we can't pass that information along to DWS. So we ask for this stuff, parent guardian, the eligibility start date, but we can't make it required in UTREX. So you are able to send over this data to us without that information, but we cannot pass that information over to DWS without that parent guardian, eligibility source, eligibility start date, and whether or not they chose to opt out data sharing with DWS. If you're unable to use UTREX or the S5 record, we do have a Qualtrics survey that you can fill out that will also come with a template to get all the required information. We are going to send out a reminder email to all LEAs with that Qualtrics link if you are unable to use UTREX. And I'm also going to post it in the chat just in case you want to take a look at it, or if you wanted to start sending over data. And I do need to emphasize that I forgot earlier is for this round 3 data collection, we are only collecting information for students who were not submitted in round 1 or round 2. This is only for newly eligible students, since that round 2 data collection was finished in May 16th of this year. You can go ahead to the next slide, please. Thank you. So here's just a little overview of the collection timeline. So we're through July determining, July through August, the food service begins determining free and reduced price meal eligible students for SY 2026, whether it's through direct certification, household applications, utilizing income eligibility guidelines. In August, that's when we're going to be collecting the UTREX data submissions, which is the S1 and S5 records that I talked about earlier. Now, for this round 3 data collection, it's going to run from August 15th to September 5th. And September 5th is going to be the last date to submit student eligibility for 2025 summer EBT benefit issuances. And then September 30th is the last date that Department of Workforce Services can make the final benefit issuance determinations. As far as CMP is concerned, we would like all of our data either by September 15th or by September 5th, or as close to that date as possible, because we do have to go through, clean up the data, perform second set of eyes on it, make sure it's all good to go before we eventually pass it on to DWS. Next slide, please. And that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to Tammy or I. Our contact information is there on the left. And on the right side is contact information for the Department of Workforce Services. I do need to emphasize that these Sunbucks program specialists, Natalie Barfus and Sean Carmichael, as well as that Sunbucks staff email address on the right, those cannot be shared, or they have asked us not to share that information with the public. That's just for agency LEA use. On the Sunbucks website, which is that link that's at the very bottom of the bottom right of the page, there is contact information if families or families of students have any questions directly for them. That's how they can contact them. That's pretty much all I've got. Are there any questions for me right now that I can answer? Great. Okay. Again, if y'all do have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to us at those contact emails on the left side. But thank you so much for your time. Y'all have a good day.
Hi, I'm Lily Chen talking about the incident and discipline data. This is just a reminder that the school disciplinary and law enforcement action report is required annually due to statute. And we've been working the past few years about trying to have better data reporting, especially since other or disruption have been the most reported category. We don't have the most recent numbers yet, but this is just giving you an idea of how almost half of the incidents reported each year have been disruption or other. Well, not necessarily a bad thing. We took a deeper look into the other and what was being reported. And if you could go to the next slide, you can see how that deeper look, there's still quite a few other incidents that should have been reported under another infraction code. So just based on some preliminary looks, we're getting a little bit better. So you can see that, for example, we had about 1,000 incidents in 24 that were described as disruptive behavior. This year, there's still about 787 counts. And again, that could have just been in LEA should be using the 25 disruption infraction code instead of reporting it under other. Same thing with fighting. We had several hundred incidences. That one actually went up in 2025. There's an infraction code for fighting. We had a few hundred reported under bullying, sexual harassment, and we still have a few reported on weapons. And again, that there are infraction codes for that. So just double check and make sure that we're using the appropriate infraction codes instead of reporting it under other. In addition to these, what we currently have, there's going to be some upcoming changes. So this is general announcement. We'll get it done on our side as well as eventually have the LEAs start preparing your student information systems, but we'll have some new data fields. So this was announced last time. There's going to be new emergency safety intervention or ESI fields due to Senate Bill 170. This revolves, like physical restraint, seclusion, etc. There's going to be some new infraction codes. So this will help, again, with that request of trying to tease out what that other is. We've worked with some LEAs and gotten some feedback as well and some specialists at USBE. And we're adding some new additional infraction codes to help just provide better clarity and better data reporting. And these are some of the ones that have been approved. We also will be deprecating sexual assault. That's infraction code number 2. because it falls actually under the federal definition of sexual harassment. So just an FYI on that. And just a little bit more detail about what those new new incident discipline data for ESIs will be. And specifically that was due to, again, the Senate Bill 170. And there's also Senate Bill 223, public education bullying amendments that are going to impact a little bit of incident data collection. Specifically, these new data reporting requirements, a lot of LEAs, from my understanding from the specialists, already collect this information, but was never required to report it to USBE. And now these components will be required to be reported to USBE. So for example, what are the ESI incident outcomes? The duration of the intervention used to respond to the incident, such as that physical restraint or seclusion. Why or the stated purpose for any intervention used. The alternative interventions attempted, the typical student demographic information, and then relevant training offered to staff, and if the staff involved receive relevant training. If you have additional questions on what this means, I'll get to that in just a bit. Also, as a heads up, it's still in the discussion phase, but the board is also exploring how ESI data will be collected by USB while these new data fields are being built. We have communicated to legislators, we can get these requirements in place, but it does take about 18 months for us to build it on USB sides and for ULEAs to, incorporate them into your system. But the legislators are very interested in this data for this upcoming year. So there's conversations, should we or can we collect some of this information through Qualtrics? So just giving you a heads up, it's not official yet, but there are those conversations happening. So just wanted to let y'all know about that. Specifically was your change regarding bullying amendments. It helped clarify some of the reportings of what is abuse conduct. And it also further differentiated the types of bullying, student bullying versus staff bullying, for example. This one I shared last time as well, but just to reiterate the importance of some of this, the primary infraction role reporting requirements have been changed a little bit. So some of it was just a little bit of a language change to match code. Currently in the Utrecht specs, victim is used, right? You have your offender, victim, or both, but it's changed to the word victim is now going to be subject. And you can see those codes there. The other thing is we have been informed by LEAs and specialists that one of the issues we have is when bullying, cyberbullying, hazing, retaliation, harassment, or sexual harassment occurs, you can enter in as offender, but oftentimes it was very, very difficult for an LEA to also enter the subject, because also statutorily LEAs are required to report the subject. So we've been working with IT and to modify and adjust the validation errors so that LEAs can more accurately report when a subject is on the receiving end of these 6 type of infractions. So student number will be condition required, right? Because sometimes these incidents involve a student not associated with the school or sometimes involves a non-student. And then we added we're planning to add a validation error for when a harassment and bullying related infraction codes are selected. If only one I2 record is entered, when you really need 2 I2 records, right? You have to have the offender and the subject. So just letting you know again that these changes are happening. So just to give you an idea of what it's going to look like, again, here's some example of the student number validation errors. And specifically here, this is what I mean by the changes to the PI role. If you look at the notes on the second row, for example, you might get an error if you only entered an offender for instead of also a subject for if and when bullying is selected, right? And you can get an error in that, like this last row here, if you only entered a subject, but you need to also have an offender. So those are some of the errors that will be coming up. So specifically, I said, where this is a lot of information. Is there somewhere with more detail? So I've been working with some USB specialists and the data stewards here. We have added an appendix section to the UTREX specification manual. And this will have some of the definitions and resources for each infraction code that's added, or even for the ones that are currently there, right? So for physical assault, for example, it's going to look something like this. And so there will be a section that you can look for emergency safety interventions that will give you more additional detail. And then this will also help fill in the knowledge gap, because we know a lot of you help train administrators when they enter in their incident data. And so as an overall summary, just a reminder, please choose the appropriate infraction codes when you're entering incident data. And we're going to be having more infraction codes, right, that are going to be added. So please try not to use other when you don't need to. We will again be adding some more validation errors to help increase reporting for the subjects of certain infraction codes. And there's going to be 6 of them again. And these apply to bullying, cyberbullying, hazing, retaliation, harassment, and sexual harassment. We'll be having 6 new ESI data fields, 12 new infraction codes, 1 deprecated infraction code. And because of all these changes, we do have an appendix with definitions and resources to help assist with these changes. If you have any questions, reach out to me and let me know. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm here to just talk about some new items that have to do with assessment that you might be interested in. Next slide. So we've got 2 new core codes this year that are for accelerated math. They are sort of a grouping of core codes, and these 2 core codes will roster a student for assessment. The accelerated 6-7 math core code will roster a student for the 6th grade RISE test at mid-year. So we would expect once your 6th grade students finish up with their 6th grade math content, they will take the assessment and then move on to 7th grade math. The next year, they would take this accelerated 7th and 8th grade math course. And then at the end of that year, they would take the 8th grade RISE math assessment. Next slide. We have a new field in the course master record for teacher LEA email. We use this information with ALO and Utah Aspire Plus to create teacher user accounts. It is an optional field, so if you don't use this, if you don't add teacher email addresses in this field, we will just use their email in their Cactus account to create a teacher user account. The Aspire SIS has had a bit of a delay adding this field in. It should be there in a couple of weeks for you to put the teacher email addresses in. Until then, just their Cactus email address will be used. Next slide. There is a new school number for Utah Fits All students for rostering for assessment. All LEAs are required to test private homeschool Utah Fits All students if they request it. So we have a rostering guide. The link to it is at the bottom of the slide, and it's been updated to reflect this new school number for UFA students. This rostering process is only for students who are not enrolled anywhere else in the state. If you find your student in Data Gateway and they would like to test with you, you do not have to go through this process. You can just test them at your location. They would just need their SSID and a test code, and that goes for RISE, Utah Aspire Plus, Acadians. We can test students at any location. So, and you only have to do special work if that student isn't anywhere in Data Gateway or enrolled anywhere in the state. Next slide. All right, just some troubleshooting facts. If you have students that aren't rostering for assessment, These are your top reasons why they aren't there. Students with fatal UTREX errors don't roster for assessment. If they have a UTREX error, it needs to be fixed before they can roster. It does take up to 48 hours for a new student to show up in an assessment. And if you make changes to an existing student record, change their address, their date of birth, their name, if they change a course, if you have a term change, that's going to cause a student to drop off rostering for probably a day. And also if it's a course-based assessment, if it's RISE, Acadians, any course-based assessment, if they do not have a correct core code assigned to their courses, they won't roster for those assessments either. We do have core code lists for assessments. Oh, sorry, next slide. We have core code lists for all assessments. If you click this link, it will take you there. We have the student rostering manual that just explains business rules and how all students are rostered for assessment. And we have that rostering guide for private and Utah Fits All and homeschool students. If you have any questions, next slide, about assessment rostering, you can contact me. I'm happy to help. Please get in touch. And that is all for me. I'm going to hand it over to Melissa.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm here with a really quick update slash announcement. So the UTREX specifications have been updated as we enter the new school year. The newest version is up and available on our website. So you can see a link to that website on the slide, and I will pop it in the chat as well. So on that page, there is a link to the specs, and that will be the newest version for LEAs and others to reference. Yeah, and that's really all I'm here to say. We have sent an email announcing this this past Tuesday afternoon. It was kind of tucked in with the announcement for this meeting, so if you've missed it, there's also a link in that email. But yeah, that will include all of the updates that we've talked about today and probably have previously talked about in this meeting. And it has the summary at the top of the document under the recent revision section that will go over all of those updates and summarize them and provide links to where in the specifications you can find the changes. And all changes are highlighted in dark red color. So people familiar with that should be able to find that. If you're not familiar with it, the UTREX specs is really just a large manual that reviews every single field and validation that we collect within UTREX, and it provides a lot of background and information about each field and each validation. So if you haven't checked it out yet, highly recommend checking it out and bookmarking that document. So that's it for me. And I think Callista's just gonna wrap it up here.
Okay, thanks, Melissa. So the next slide we're not really presenting on, but we just wanted to display these dates. This is proposed, so if you do end up saving these for next year, just know that it's possible that something could change, but these are the dates that we are more than likely considering for next year's LEA data meetings. There's a few months where we don't have a meeting. And I actually need to remove the question mark because we do know the spring data conference date for sure. That's not a question mark. So I'll make sure to fix that before I send these out. And again, this is just for your awareness, starting in January, so you can mark these on your calendars for next year. And this will also be on the agendas that we keep sending out for the future meetings. And yeah, I think that's everything we have. Are there any questions? We can stay on for a little bit. Otherwise, that is our meeting for today. And we will be meeting next in September. It will feel like a little bit longer just because this is the beginning of the month and the September meeting is more mid to end of September. That meeting will be really important though, because we will be doing the training for the October finalized submission in September. Okay, there is one question. Who can I contact for WIDA and ELL help? So I believe Christelle Estrada, well, it kind of depends what you're needing help with. Christelle Estrada is the specialist for the English language learners, but if it's more of a data question, you can contact data and statistics. So it kind of depends what you're needing help with. And then for WIDA, I believe it's someone on assessment, but I'm drawing a blank. If anyone at USBE remembers who the WIDA contact is.
Megan Lopez.
Thank you, Megan.
Or me. I can answer some WIDA questions too.
Okay, so someone from assessment. Okay. Thank you for joining today. We'll see you in September, and we will email all of the resources out from today's meeting. So hope you guys have a good start of the new school year.